The restaurant was modest. A small family-run place tucked in a quiet corner of the city, away from the hustle of luxury malls and high-rise hotels. It wasn't the kind of place you'd expect to see a man like Harrison Grant, billionaire, investor, and the face of almost every business magazine in the country. He usually dined in private lounges or five-star rooftops. But that day he walked through the weather-worn door of Maggie's diner, holding the hand of a boy who didn't walk quite right, whose gaze wandered and mouth quivered. A boy no older than 10, bundled in a blue jacket 2 sizes too big. The bell above the door jingled. People glanced up but didn't recognize him. He liked it that way. No suits, no assistants, just him, his son Noah, and the quiet clink of cutlery in the background. He chose the corner booth. It was quieter there, easier for Noah. A waitress, maybe mid-20s, tired eyes, but a warm smile, walked over with 2 menus. "Good afternoon, gentlemen. My name is Grace. Let me know if you need a minute." Harrison nodded. Noah stared at the salt shaker like it was the most fascinating thing on earth. Grace noticed. 10 minutes later, she returned. "What can I get for you?" Harrison looked at Noah. "Buddy, you want the pancakes?" Noah didn't answer. He just made a soft sound, not quite a word. Harrison nodded and handed the menu back. "Pancakes for him. Coffee for me." Grace gave a gentle nod and walked away. Minutes passed. Then the plate came, stacked high with warm, golden pancakes. Grace set them in front of Noah and waited. He didn't touch them. Instead, he just sat there, trembling, looking overwhelmed. Harrison's fingers twitched. He reached into the bag for Noah's special spoon, but Grace surprised him. She crouched next to Noah, her voice soft like music. "It's okay, sweetheart. Want me to help?" Harrison stiffened. He was used to awkward stares, to people pretending not to notice his son's condition. But Grace didn't flinch. She took the spoon and slowly, patiently, brought it to Noah's lips. Noah took the bite, and then smiled. Something shifted in Harrison's chest. He watched silently as Grace wiped Noah's chin, spoke to him like he was any other boy, laughed when he made a mess, and let him hold the spoon even when syrup dripped all over her notepad. She was kind. Genuinely kind, and he hadn't seen that in a long, long time. When the meal was done, Harrison paid in cash. He left a $50 tip. Grace didn't notice it at first. When she finally did, she chased him outside. Sir, I think you left this by mistake." "No mistake," Harrison said calmly, lifting Noah into the car seat of a black SUV. "Thank you for your patience." And then he was gone. But something about that woman stuck with him. Something about the way she looked at his son, not with pity, not with discomfort, but with understanding. That night, Harrison couldn't sleep. He kept replaying the moment in his head. How effortless she made it seem. How Noah laughed. How he hadn't seen that laugh in months. The next morning, he returned. Grace wasn't on shift. The manager, an older woman named Maggie, raised an eyebrow when he asked, "Why you looking for her?" "Just wanted to thank her again." "Is she all right?" Maggie frowned. "She's managing. Works 2 jobs. Takes care of her little brother. Special needs too. Parents passed a few years ago. She's all he's got." That explained the look in her eyes. "Do you have her last name?" Maggie hesitated. "Why?" Harrison gave a polite smile. "Let's just say, I believe in rewarding kindness." Maggie didn't give a name. But Harrison had resources. Within hours, his assistant sent a file to his desk. Grace L. Thompson, age 26. Guardian to Daniel Thompson, age 9. Conditions, cerebral palsy. He stared at the photo. A young boy with a crooked smile and oversized glasses, clutching a teddy bear. Something in Harrison snapped. The next day, he returned again. This time, Grace was there. She froze when she saw him. "You're back." "I am." "Everything okay?" "More than okay." He paused. "Would you join us again?" Grace looked around. She was the only server during the morning shift. "I can't, I'll pay for your time." She stared, confused. "Just for a few minutes." Maggie overheard. "Go on, Grace. Table 3 can wait." Grace followed him to the booth. Noah was already seated, playing with a napkin. "Hi there, buddy," she said gently, sitting across from him. Noah grinned. They talked, laughed. She even taught him a game with sugar packets. And for a moment, Harrison just watched, like a man seeing the sun for the first time after a long winter. "Grace," he said quietly, "how much do you make here?" She blinked. "Not enough." "Would you consider working for me?" She looked at him like he was joking. "Doing what?" "Helping Noah. Being his caregiver, tutor, companion. You already understand him." She didn't answer right away. She looked down, twisting the ring on her finger. "I can't. I have Daniel. I can't just." "He's welcome too. I'll arrange everything. A home nurse, schooling, transportation. Anything." She frowned. "Why would you do that?" Harrison leaned forward. "Because I haven't seen my son smile like that in a long time. Because most people see him as a burden. You didn't." Still, she hesitated. He handed her a card. "Think about it. There's no pressure. I just wanted to offer." He didn't return the next day. Or the day after. Grace pocketed the card. She didn't call. But things at home were hard. The rent was overdue. Daniel had a seizure last week. She was late on her second job 3 times and on the verge of being fired. The stress was eating her. 3 days later, she sat on her couch, Daniel asleep beside her, and dialed the number. A calm voice answered. "Mr. Grant's office." Grace introduced herself. Within the hour, a car arrived. A sleek black town car with tinted windows and a quiet driver. She almost didn't go. But something told her this wasn't ordinary. She arrived at a tall glass building. His private office was on the top floor. He greeted her himself. No assistants. No board members. Just him and a panoramic view of the city. "You came," he said simply. "I'm not saying yes. I just wanted to hear more." He nodded. "Let's talk." He explained everything. The job. The hours. The benefits. A private apartment nearby. Access to therapists, specialists, and educators for both Noah and Daniel. It sounded like a dream. Too much like a dream. "What do you want in return?" she asked. "Nothing." No catch. None. She didn't believe him. She stood to leave. But he said one last thing. "Your kindness may have seemed small, but it meant everything to my son." She left in silence. That night Noah asked, "Where's the lady?" And Harrison didn't know what to say. 2 more days passed. Then she called again. "I'll try it. 2 weeks. That's all." He smiled. 2 weeks is all I need." And so it began. Grace moved into the apartment, Daniel beside her. Noah adjusted quickly. Within days, the boys were like brothers. Daniel helping Noah with blocks, Noah helping Daniel with laughter. Grace created routines. Morning exercises. Quiet time. Picture books. Homemade meals. She brought order and joy. Harrison watched from a distance, unsure of what he was feeling. Gratitude? Relief? Or something deeper? One night, he stayed late. Grace was reading to the boys. Her voice soft. The room peaceful. She looked up and saw him. He almost left. But she said, "You can stay." So he did. Night after night, he stayed longer. Until one evening, Grace found him asleep in the chair beside the boys' room. She draped a blanket over him and whispered, "You look tired." He murmured, half asleep, "First time I've slept peacefully in years." Neither said more. But something had shifted. Then one afternoon it all changed. Grace was walking Daniel through the park when a man approached. Rough. Suspicious eyes. Unshaven. "You Grace Thompson?" She stiffened. "Yes." "You're being watched. Walk away from the Grant family. Now." Her heart stopped. She pulled Daniel close. The man disappeared. That night, she told Harrison everything. His face turned to stone. "I'll handle it." "I don't understand." "Who would?" "My world has enemies. Business rivals. Some don't like how I've cleaned up certain contracts. You were seen with me. That made you a target." Grace froze. "I put Daniel in danger." "No," Harrison said firmly. "They did. I won't let them touch you." But Grace was already packing. "I can't. This isn't safe." Noah cried when she said goodbye. So did Daniel. Harrison watched her go without a word. But 3 days later, the headlines broke. Corrupt billionaire exposed. Harrison Grant Clean's house. Arrests. Raids. Files leaked to the press. He had cut out the cancer from his empire. And then he waited. Waited at the park where they used to walk. On the 4th day, she came. Her eyes full of questions. He only said, "It's safe now." She didn't answer. But she didn't walk away either. Noah ran to her. Daniel followed. And this time, when she smiled, it reached her eyes. And Harrison? He smiled too. Because sometimes the smallest act of kindness can change the course of a life. Or maybe even 4. But deep down, none of them knew. This was only the beginning. The following months passed like chapters in a novel Grace never imagined living in. Each day bled into the next, with a kind of unexpected beauty, calm, and growth that seemed foreign to her life before. The apartment Harrison had provided no longer felt temporary. The quiet hum of morning routines, the laughter between Noah and Daniel echoing through the halls, the smell of real breakfast, not rushed toast before a double shift. This was a rhythm she didn't know she had longed for. And Harrison, well, he was changing too, though he'd never admit it. He still wore his mask of composure, still had moments where he drifted into the silence of his own world. But Grace noticed the small things. The way he waited until Daniel finished telling a story, even if it didn't quite make sense. The way he tucked Noah's blanket tighter than necessary. The way he watched Grace when he thought she wasn't looking. Not with lust or admiration, but with something far more dangerous. Vulnerability. It was during a late November evening, when the city lights outside flickered against the frost of the windows, that Grace found herself standing on the balcony, arms wrapped in a woolen shawl, staring into the kind of darkness that used to scare her. Not anymore. Harrison joined her quietly, holding 2 mugs of tea. He handed her one. She took it without speaking. They stood in silence until the city below began to hum softer. "I used to think people only saw value in me because of my net worth," he said suddenly. Grace turned slightly, surprised by the rawness of the statement. "Then I met you. You didn't care who I was. You cared about my son, about a pancake-covered spoon." He chuckled, almost to himself. Grace didn't laugh. Instead, she said quietly, "I saw someone scared. Someone who didn't know how to help the person he loved most." That made him pause. "I still don't," he admitted. "You're doing better than you think," she replied. The closeness between them grew, but it was fragile. Harrison wasn't a man used to opening himself. Grace had known pain, loss, struggle. She wore her scars like quiet medals of survival. But Harrison's wounds were hidden beneath years of power, pride, and isolation. He began involving her more in his business affairs, not at boardrooms or meetings, but in private conversations over coffee. He asked her opinions on human-centered projects, charities, outreach programs. Her suggestions were simple, honest, sometimes naive, but he listened. Actually listened. He even began funding a therapy center for children with disabilities, naming it after his son, without plastering his own name across the building. Grace didn't praise him. She didn't need to. Her approval came in the way she smiled when Noah giggled through his therapy session, or how she squeezed his shoulder once after he read a bedtime story to both boys. But peace has a way of being temporary, especially in a world built on power and secrets. One night, Harrison didn't come home. No warning. No call. Hours passed. Grace paced the apartment, Daniel asleep, Noah starting to grow anxious, picking at his sleeve. Finally, around 3 a.m., the door opened. Harrison walked in, suit torn, blood on his collar, eyes dazed like a man who'd walked through hell. Grace rushed to him, heart racing. "What happened?" she whispered, her voice tight with fear. He looked at her, then at Noah, then simply collapsed into the nearest chair. "There's someone inside my company. Someone who doesn't want the changes I'm making. They tried to scare me off tonight." He pulled up his sleeve. A dark bruise marked his ribs. They failed. Grace stared at him, heart pounding. "Harrison, this isn't just business anymore. This is dangerous." He nodded slowly. "I know." She wanted to scream, to tell him to let someone else fight the battles. But she also knew he couldn't. Men like Harrison didn't walk away from war. They ended it. The days after were tense. Security was doubled. Cars were checked. The boys were never left alone. Grace began to feel the weight of another life pressing against her. The life she thought she'd escaped when she accepted the offer to stay. She began questioning. Was she putting Daniel in danger again? Was the safety she'd found nothing more than an illusion draped in wealth? Harrison noticed. One night, he caught her packing Daniel's bag again. She didn't lie. I can't lose him. He's all I have. Harrison knelt beside her. You're not going to lose him. You can't promise that, she snapped, wiping her tears. You have enemies. Real ones. I can't put him through that. Then let me protect you both. Permanently, he said. She looked at him, confused. He took out a small box. She gasped, but not in joy. Don't misunderstand, he said quickly. This isn't a proposal of romance. This is me asking you to stay, to be a part of this family, whatever form that takes. I can give Daniel a future. I can give you safety. And maybe we'll figure the rest out as we go. She opened the box. Inside wasn't a ring. It was a key to the estate he owned in the countryside. Secure, secluded, guarded. She stared at it. What if I say no? Then I'll still fight for Noah. But I'll miss you every damn day. She didn't speak, but she took the key. They moved the next week. The estate was breathtaking. Rolling fields. Private therapists on call. A school on site. Grace found herself breathing deeper. Daniel began to walk better. Noah's speech improved. Harrison visited often, though not daily. He gave her space. But one evening, she found him sitting on the back patio, alone, watching the sunset. I was wrong, she said quietly, sitting beside him. About what? This isn't temporary. This all of it. It's home now. He looked at her, and for the first time, she saw something deeper in his eyes. Not control, not dominance, but trust. Trust earned, not bought. Over time, they stopped calling it a contract. They started calling it family. But fate hadn't written its final chapter. One morning, a letter arrived. Handwritten, unsigned, sealed with wax. Grace opened it. The words chilled her blood. He doesn't know what we know. We're watching. If he keeps digging, we bury him. She showed Harrison immediately. His face didn't flinch, but his knuckles whitened. That evening, he held Noah tighter, kissed his forehead twice. Grace watched, understanding that something inside him had shifted again. The kindness hadn't disappeared. It had simply made room for something else. Resolve. The next month was a blur. Grace barely saw him. Long phone calls. Night meetings. Whispered conversations behind locked doors. She knew something was coming. Something big. Then came the explosion. Not literal. Financial. Harrison took down 3 senior executives from his company. Fraud. Laundering. Racketeering. It hit the news like wildfire. The stock dropped, lawsuits flew. But through the firestorm, Harrison stood tall. And then vanished. Grace didn't hear from him for 2 days. She feared the worst. Then, on the 3rd morning, a helicopter landed on the estate's lawn. He stepped out, eyes weary but triumphant. I'm clean, he said simply. He didn't explain further. But Grace understood. He had destroyed the last of the rot. At breakfast, Noah asked, Daddy, are you staying now? Harrison looked at Grace. Then nodded. Yes, buddy. I'm staying. That night, they had dinner together. Like a family. No guards. No fear. Just 4 plates, laughter, and candlelight. And for the first time, Grace realized she was no longer surviving. She was living. And so was Harrison. But still, in the back of her mind, she knew. This story wasn't over. Because men like Harrison never truly leave the shadows. They just learn how to live in the light without letting go of the night. And now they had something far more precious to protect. Love. And that was more dangerous than any secret could ever be. Winter passed quietly on the estate, as if the world had agreed to give them a moment to breathe. Grace spent her mornings watching the boys chase each other through the frost-covered gardens, their giggles carving joy into the cold air. Daniel had learned how to catch snowflakes on his tongue. Noah had learned how to build snowmen with gloves too big for his hands. Harrison, when he was home, was different now. Softer, less armored. He no longer checked his phone obsessively during dinner or took secret calls behind closed doors. He laughed more freely, not the controlled chuckle of a man managing an empire, but the raw sound of a father who knew he had almost lost everything. And Grace? She found herself humming again. Sometimes while folding laundry, sometimes while brushing Daniel's hair. It had been so long since music had come out of her that it startled her at first, but she welcomed it like sunlight on skin. But peace, she'd learned, was never permanent. It was a loan with interest, and eventually the past always sent a bill. The first sign came subtly. A shadow outside the estate gates that didn't belong. The security team brushed it off, a lost hiker, a wandering tourist. Then came the emails. Anonymous. Empty. Just a photo attached each time. First, of Harrison speaking with Grace on the patio. Then of Daniel walking alone down the drive. Then of Noah asleep in his room. Each more invasive than the last. Harrison tightened security. Grace stopped letting the boys out of sight. The warmth they'd grown used to suddenly turned into a chill. The laughter faded, replaced by nervous glances, by triple checking locks, by sleepless nights. And one evening, as the sky turned purple with dusk, the unthinkable happened. Daniel was gone. One moment he was in the backyard, playing by the trees. The next silence. Panic was immediate. Harrison shouted commands into radios. Drones lifted into the sky. Guards scattered in every direction. Grace's scream tore through the house like a bomb. She ran barefoot across the frozen grass, heart collapsing inside her chest. Daniel, Daniel, she screamed until her throat burned. Noah cried inside, asking where his friend was, but no one could answer. Then a phone rang. Harrison's private line. He answered it on speaker. A voice, cold, male, unfamiliar, spoke. Now you understand what it means to be vulnerable. Then the call ended. The next 12 hours were hell. Harrison, despite the fury burning behind his eyes, stayed unnaturally calm. It terrified Grace more than rage would have. He made calls, activated something, some protocol she didn't understand. Men she didn't recognize showed up. Not in suits, not in uniforms, but men who didn't ask questions. Men who had scars not just on their skin, but in their souls. They fanned out, silent, lethal, efficient. Grace didn't sleep. She sat in Daniel's room, holding his favorite toy, breathing through a pain that felt like drowning. Harrison came in around 3 a.m., sat beside her, didn't say anything. Just reached out, took her hand. I will get him back, he said, even if I have to burn the entire world down. She nodded once. She believed him. By sunrise, there was a lead. An abandoned property 30 miles away. Surveillance caught a figure matching Daniel's description being dragged inside late the night before. Harrison went himself. Against every warning. Against every strategy. Grace begged him not to. You don't have to prove anything, she cried. Let your team handle it. But he looked at her with something she hadn't seen before, regret. No one threatens my family and walks away. She kissed him once, deep, desperate, maybe for the last time. Then he left. 2 hours later, the estate security got the call. Daniel was safe. No injuries. Just scared. Hungry. But safe. Grace drove to the safe house immediately, her hands shaking the whole way. She found him wrapped in a blanket, cocoa in hand, eyes wide but alive. She held him so tightly, he squeaked. Mom, I wasn't scared, he whispered. I knew you'd come. I always will, she choked out, tears soaking his hair. Harrison returned hours later, covered in bruises, bleeding from a cut on his cheek. But there was something different about him now. The weight he'd carried, the shame, the guilt, the secrecy, it had cracked. And beneath it, there was only a man, a father, a man who had finally chosen to stop running from himself. The men who had taken Daniel were former business rivals. Ones who had lost everything when Harrison cleaned house. They hadn't wanted money. They wanted pain. They wanted to break him. But they hadn't understood what they'd done. They hadn't broken him. They'd reforge him. He pressed charges. His legal team prepared to wipe them off the map. But in the end, it wasn't revenge he sought. It was closure. And now he had it. They moved back into the estate 2 weeks later. No cameras. No news coverage. No statements. Just a family healing. The day Harrison sat on the grass with Noah and Daniel and began building a model rocket, Grace knew something had changed forever. This wasn't about charity anymore, or guilt, or even gratitude. This was love. It had grown quietly, like vines up a wall, without permission, but beautiful all the same. That night, as the boys slept, Harrison found Grace in the library. She was reading, glasses low on her nose, a blanket across her lap. "Do you ever miss the old life?" he asked. She looked up. "Which one? The one where I worked 16-hour shifts and counted coins for bus fare? Or the one where I couldn't sleep because my son was somewhere I couldn't reach?" He smiled softly. "Neither, then." She set her book down. "I like this one. The one where I'm not waiting for the world to fall apart." He walked over, sat beside her, took her hand. "I think I'm in love with you," he said, so plainly it caught her breath. She didn't respond immediately. Then she leaned in, pressed her forehead to his. "I think I've loved you since you asked me not to treat your son like a burden." They kissed. And this time, it wasn't a question. It was an answer. The next spring, they held a small ceremony. No media. No guest lists. Just vows whispered under a tree, Noah holding the rings, Daniel dropping petals from a small basket he insisted was a flower cannon. Grace wore a simple white dress. Harrison wore the softest smile anyone had ever seen. They didn't need a title. Not wife or husband or stepmother or billionaire. They were just them, together. A family not born by blood or bound by wealth, but by love, by pain survived, by trust earned. And as the sun dipped behind the hills and the boys chased fireflies through the grass, Grace watched them and thought, this is what forever looks like. No chaos, no fear, just the sound of laughter, and peace that didn't feel borrowed. It felt earned. And no one, no shadow, no enemy, no past, could ever take that from them again. Because the strongest stories are the ones that begin with kindness and end at home.